In 1965, a Yale economics student wrote a paper describing a new kind of delivery company. He proposed that packages could be guaranteed to arrive overnight, anywhere in America, through a dedicated network of planes and trucks, all routed through a central sorting hub. As computers spread through American business, he argued companies would need a faster, more reliable way to move the parts and documents that kept them running. His professor gave him a C-. His name was Fred Smith. He built Federal Express anyway, and in doing so he invented overnight delivery, reshaped global logistics, made e-commerce possible, and changed the way the entire world thinks about time. Frederick Wallace Smith was born on August 11, 1944 in Marks, Mississippi. His father, James Frederick Smith Sr., was a successful businessman who had founded Dixie Greyhound Lines and other ventures. He died when Fred was just 4 years old, and the boy was raised by his mother and uncles in Memphis, Tennessee. As a young child, Fred suffered from Legg-Calvé-Perthes syndrome, a potentially crippling bone disease. He recovered fully by the time he was 10. And in the way that childhood adversity sometimes shapes a person's relationship with risk, Fred Smith emerged from his illness with an unusual quality. He was genuinely unafraid of things that scared other people. He learned to fly airplanes at 15. At Yale, he studied economics, joined the DKE fraternity, where George W. Bush was a fraternity brother, and in 1965, in a paper for an economics class, described the company that would become FedEx. The professor graded it a C-. Smith graduated in 1966, was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, and went to Vietnam. Fred Smith served 2 tours in Vietnam. He flew on more than 200 combat missions as a platoon leader and forward air controller. He was awarded the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. He never stopped thinking about the overnight delivery idea. He later said that he considered the Marine Corps his real business school. Not because of the discipline or the leadership training, though both mattered, but because of what he observed about military logistics. The United States military moved an extraordinary volume of parts, supplies, and equipment across the world with a reliability and speed that the private sector simply could not match. It did so because it treated logistics as a system, not as an afterthought. Smith watched, learned, and filed away everything he saw. He was discharged in 1970 with the rank of captain. He came home to Memphis, bought the controlling interest in an aircraft maintenance company, and started planning. On June 18, 1971, Fred Smith founded Federal Express Corporation. He used $4 million from his inheritance and raised $91 million in venture capital, the largest private investment package ever assembled up to that point. His original vision was to serve the Federal Reserve Bank, to move checks and financial documents overnight, eliminating the float between when a transaction was initiated and when it was completed. The Federal Reserve declined. Smith kept the name anyway. On the night of April 17, 1973, Federal Express began operations from Memphis, Tennessee. 14 Dassault Falcon jets flew to 25 cities across the United States. 186 packages were delivered. The first 2 years came close to destroying everything. The company lost nearly $30 million in its first 26 months. Rising fuel costs caused by the Arab oil embargo of 1973 nearly broke the economics of the business entirely. At one point, with a critical loan denied by the bank and no money left to pay the fuel bill, Smith did something that has become one of the great stories in American business history. He took the company's last $5,000 to Las Vegas, sat down at a blackjack table, and won $27,000. It was enough to cover the fuel bill and keep the planes flying for 1 more week. He later said that the decision made no real difference in the long run. The company was going to succeed or fail on its fundamentals, and the fundamentals were right. But the story captures something true about Fred Smith. He was constitutionally incapable of giving up. The insight at the heart of FedEx was the hub-and-spoke system. Before FedEx, air freight was carried as a secondary consideration in the belly of passenger planes. It was unreliable, subject to cancellations, delays, and overbooking. Packages moved on the airline's schedule, not the shipper's, and the idea of guaranteeing overnight delivery was, as Smith's Yale professor had suggested, considered impractical. Smith's model was completely different. He built a dedicated fleet of aircraft that flew only freight. Every package from every origin city flew to a single central hub, Memphis, where it was sorted through the night and loaded onto outbound flights to its destination. By the time the sun came up, the packages were on trucks making last-mile deliveries. The system worked because every element was designed around the single constraint of overnight delivery. Nothing in the system existed for any other purpose. Federal Express reached profitability in 1976. In 1978, two things happened that transformed the company's trajectory. First, the Airline Deregulation Act removed government control over routes and pricing. Smith had actively lobbied for deregulation, understanding that it would allow FedEx to buy larger, more efficient aircraft and expand freely. Second, the company went public on the New York Stock Exchange. The combination of deregulation and capital from the IPO unlocked the next phase of growth. By 1983, just 10 years after the first night's operations, Federal Express hit $1 billion in annual revenue. In 1984, it launched international service. In 1994, it introduced online package tracking. For the first time, customers could follow their shipment in real time from the moment it was picked up to the moment it was delivered. That single innovation transformed customer expectations across the entire retail and logistics industry. Smith ran FedEx for more than 50 years, stepping down as CEO in June 2022. Under his leadership, the company grew from a single hub in Memphis to a global network operating in more than 220 countries, handling 17 million shipments every day with annual revenue approaching $90 billion. The hub-and-spoke routing system he invented for freight was later adopted by commercial airlines. Southwest Airlines built its entire network model on the principle. FedEx's approach to online tracking became the standard that Amazon, UPS, and every other logistics company eventually replicated. His advocacy for deregulation reshaped the entire aviation industry. Fred Smith died on June 21, 2025 in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 80 years old. What did Fred Smith actually build? 4 things that changed the world. First, overnight delivery as a reliable promise. Before FedEx, express delivery meant days, with no guarantee. Smith made overnight a promise that could be engineered, repeated, and trusted every single night across the entire country, then the entire world. Second, the hub-and-spoke network. His Memphis sorting hub became the model for modern logistics and for commercial aviation. Every major airline hub system in the world descends from the structure Smith designed for FedEx in the early 1970s. Third, online package tracking. In 1994, FedEx gave customers real-time visibility into where their package was for the first time in history. It set an expectation of transparency that transformed retail, logistics, and ultimately the entire e-commerce industry. Fourth, time as a product. Smith's deepest insight was that time itself could be packaged and sold. Speed was not a feature, it was the product. Every logistics company and every e-commerce platform that has been built since operates on that principle. 3 lessons from Fred Smith's life. First, the professor is not always right. Smith's professor graded his Yale paper a C- because overnight delivery seemed impractical. Smith built it anyway. Expert skepticism is not evidence of impossibility. Experts optimize for the world as it is. Entrepreneurs build the world as it could be. Second, survive long enough to be right. FedEx lost $30 million in its first 26 months. Smith gambled at blackjack to pay a fuel bill. He kept going. The idea was right. The timing was just early. In the early years of any genuinely new business, survival is itself a strategy. Third, Read the policy environment and position for it. Smith fought for airline deregulation because he understood that it would unlock FedEx's ability to grow. The Airline Deregulation Act of 1978 was not luck for Fred Smith. It was the result of deliberate positioning. The best entrepreneurs understand that the policy environment shapes what is possible, and they work to change it when it stands in their way. A C- on a Yale paper, a blackjack table in Las Vegas, a single hub in Memphis sorting packages through the night. 17 million shipments a day, 220 countries, $90 billion in annual revenue. The professor graded the idea, history graded the result. Thank you for joining us for episode 38. Our next episode is Lee Iacocca, the man who invented the Ford Mustang, was fired by Henry Ford II, and then pulled off the most dramatic corporate turnaround in American business history at Chrysler. Until then, stay curious.